It may seem like an extra and possibly unnecessary step in the speech-making process, but you really do have to analyze your audience before you create your speech. Speeches must first and foremost consider the needs of the audience. After all, the real reason to make a speech is to inform, persuade, or entertain an audience. Notice that speaker needs is not part of the reasons to make a speech. Sorry to announce this little fact, but it's not about you. Hard to hear, I know. If you will set aside what you want to speak about and how you want to speak, and focus instead on the needs of the audience, your speech will turn out better and you'll get a better grade, which, in terms of a speech course, is probably the ultimate goal. So let's just look at some of the objectives for this slideshow just a moment. I want to describe the methods for gathering information. I'd like to explain to you how to analyze and use this information to adapt it to your audience. And then we're going to talk about some demographic characteristics and discuss the audience attitudes that can affect your speech. Then we'll analyze the key aspects of the speaking situation we're dealing with, and finally, identify methods of assessing audience reactions after you've given your speech. Let's talk about how to gather information about your audience. You can do this two ways, formally and informally. Let's look at informally. You could just simply think about who you think will be in the audience and then think about what a typical person who will be in the audience would think about your topic. You could ask other people who know the audience and what they think about the audience. You could also try and find out more about your audience through formal channels. You could send a survey if this were a larger audience and you had the time. You could talk to the organizers of the event and ask both open-ended questions, ones that begin with how or what or why, and closed questions such as how many. For a speech class, you generally know a bit about your audience before you give your speech, as you've been in class with them for a good part of the semester. Try to remember, where does this audience stand on topics that interest you? When you create your speech, it is important to find that sweet spot where you can join the audience on common ground. This is often part of building your credibility and helping the audience to see some of the more important things that you have in common. We tend to believe those we think are like us. So it's important to develop, at the very beginning, common ground with the audience so that they will be open to what you have to say. It's also important to note that you must be honest when dealing and developing this common ground. Lying just so the audience will like you and be open to your message will eventually come back to bite you and destroy your credibility. Your message will then be seen as a lie. Ethics are important throughout all parts of the speech building process. When we say demographics, we mean the divisions people can take which can influence how they would perceive your message. Such as a speech to a group of junior high children on racial inequality would be a very different speech to one given to college students, and it would even differ if the audience were senior citizens. A speech to women about safety after dark is a completely different speech than one given to a group of men if it is to be effective. Speakers must think about the education level of their audience as another example. The words you choose to use may make your speech shine, or you may seem like a pretentious know-it-all if you don't adapt your speech to your audience. Knowing as much as you can about the audience and their demographics will help you craft a speech that is appealing to the audience. You'll want to appeal to the audience so they are receptive to you and your speech. When an audience is receptive, they will give you positive feedback, which helps reduce your anxiety, and it also makes for a better speech in general. The whole of a person is like an iceberg. We only see the very tip of the iceberg, yet we often think we see it all. This graphic well illustrates this concept. We can look to the behaviors and practices of our audience members and think we know their attitudes, beliefs, and values. However, there are some things we can tell from behaviors. Just realize that you're making an educated guess. Let's talk about one of these parts of our psychology. Behaviors and practices. These are the things we see, the things we judge others by. Sometimes we misattribute behaviors for beliefs. This is just an assumption. We sometimes think that if we ourselves acted in a certain way, it would indicate a certain attitude, belief, or value, when in reality, it just represents our own attitudes, beliefs, or values. In any speech, it is only really possible to try and change someone's behaviors. Appealing to commonalities in attitudes, beliefs, and values will help you, though. Now let's look at what really lies below the surface. Attitudes. These reflect our likes or dislikes and are built upon our beliefs, values, and what our cultures tell us to be true about life and ourselves. It is unlikely you will change an attitude with one little speech, but you can appeal to a person's likes or dislikes in an attempt to get them to change a behavior. Beliefs. These are what people hold to be true or false. These are based on values and again are shaped by cultures. These are very difficult to change with other people. It would take years of work to change a belief. Again, you can illustrate how a person's own belief system would be better served by changing their beliefs to something your speech advocates, but still, you're not going to change a belief. And finally, values. The enduring concept of good and bad. Good luck ever changing someone's values. To change a value is decades of work and generally some sort of moment of epiphany that they themselves have, not something you're going to accomplish with a speech. But again, you can appeal to a sense of right and wrong when trying to persuade people to do something you want or to think your way. Knowing that you can appeal to attitudes, beliefs, and values can help you when you analyze your audience. You can try to understand what they think about your topic before you even speak. First, are they even interested in your topic? If not, choose another topic. If this is a persuasive speech, you need to know if they are favorable towards your solutions or unfavorable. If they are unfavorable, you really have your work cut out for you and will have to use more persuasive techniques to swing them over to your way of thinking. Also, is the audience there because they came to hear you, or are they there because they have to be there? Mostly, in speech class, you're talking to a captive audience. Remember, this is when you develop your speech and keep in mind that you will have to win them over a bit more than if they willingly drove somewhere to hear you speak. And finally, you need to look at how the audience thinks about you. Do you seem credible? What can you do to increase your credibility? We will cover this more in other chapters, but there are some things you can start with. You can do your research and cite your sources. You can dress as a credible speaker, and you can prepare your speech so that you seem worthy of listening to. Other things to think about are the time and place of the speech. Speaking right after lunch is really tough. People get sleepy when their bellies are full, but if this is your time slot, don't worry. You just need to make sure your speech has a lot of energy to keep people awake. You must also think about the place of the speech. Is it in a large room or a small room? What about is it online only? Is it outside? You'll have to adjust how you speak in all of these situations. Don't think there's only one style of speaking that works for all places. Larger audiences require more general examples because you want to appeal to most everyone in the room. Smaller audiences allow you to personalize the speech. When you have the chance to personalize a speech to an audience, take it. And finally, think about that speaking occasion. Is it a formal event like a toast or a wedding? Are you expected to be funny? Or is it a training where you have to give information to people? Is it a classroom speech? You'll probably have to shift your speaking style to meet the occasion. If you want to become a better speaker, you should also continue the analysis after you speak. How did the speech work? Did the audience seem to enjoy it? Did you accomplish your goals? Maybe they just applauded to be polite, or maybe you received uproarious applause. Someone probably said something to you about how you did. Most of the time, we have a social obligation to say good job after a speech. This is one way you can gauge how you did with a speech. Don't be afraid to ask for notes either from people you trust. We can't get better if we don't have a goal and something to correct. You could do one of those surveys if your speech was to an audience where that would work. Finally, you can use your own knowledge of human behavior to read the audience. You can tell if they were interested. You can tell if they were bored. Use these responses to inform how you prepare for the next speech. Take the time to think about your audience before you even choose a topic. Really, speeches should be centered around the audience, and to do it any other way is to miss the point of a speech. Granted, for speech class, it may seem like the point of the speech is do the speech, get the grade. That's partially true. But you'll have a better speech and a better speaking experience if you will take the time to think about the people in your audience and what they want or need to hear. Good luck with all your speeches this semester.